We know how it goes in the movies, especially sports movies, right? There's an obstacle in the way, but with grit and heart and determination, our scrappy hero fights back. There's usually a big locker room speech in there, and then in the end, yep, the whole indomitable triumph of the human spirit thing prevails. The hero wins, everyone celebrates. Of course, Isaiah Thomas doesn't play in the movies. Isaiah Thomas plays in the NBA, which is a much more practical affair, where yes, it is good to have perseverance and heart and all that, but what you really need is size and strength and talent. In the NBA, Goliath wins a whole lot more than David. So from the beginning, it has been quite the uphill battle for Thomas, taken as the very last pick in the 2011 draft. He had to prove himself with the Kings, eventually scrapping his way to a starting spot. He had a rough go in Phoenix after the Suns inexplicably stuffed their roster with point guards. But in Boston, finally, everything clicked. IT built himself into a sharpshooter, a late-game savior, eventually even an MVP candidate, something that truly shouldn't have even been possible for a guy listed at 5'9". So when his hip started bothering him in the spring of last season, IT did what he had always done, which is put his head down and fight through it. Because Davids don't get extra cushions of time to heal in a Goliath league. And when his younger sister was killed in a car crash right before the playoffs, well, he cried, even right there courtside during shoot-around. But again, he kept going. By the time his hip finally gave out on him during the conference finals, IT certainly felt he had proven his worth, that he'd finally earned his Hollywood ending. We all remember the infamous quote at Summer League last year when he said the Celtics needed to back up the Brinks truck for his next contract. But this isn't Hollywood. There was no truck. Instead, just a trade to Cleveland, where he first sat out and then struggled. IT's Cavs career was just an awkward basketball fit. It got awkward in the locker room. It got really awkward on the court. Remember how LeBron basically ignored Thomas after hitting that big game winner against Minnesota? Yeah. Thomas was eventually dealt to the Lakers. Yeah, it wasn't good. To be Lonzo Ball's backup. Then the hip started flaring again. Surgery knocked him out for the rest of the season. And by the time this month's free agency period rolled around, IT was seen as a risky bet in a tight market. It wasn't until last night that Thomas agreed to go to Denver on a one-year vet minimum deal. So now, right. Well, you guys could write IT off if you want. Plenty of people do. A bench role with a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 5 years, that's not exactly glamorous, and we still don't know for sure if Thomas can ever fully regain the fast twitch quickness that allowed him to create all those beautiful windows of space for himself in Boston. Personally, I would never bet against IT. This is a man who has shown time and time again he can survive and even thrive when things get hard. Not because of some movie cliche sappiness, but because he has been able to figure out the angles even in a league not physically built for him. Yes, at some point we will get the closing credits on IT's career. But this doesn't seem like it's nearly it. Instead, it feels like it's time to get some popcorn, sit back, and watch the show. Ramona, are you there with me? Do you think this Nuggets team is a good fit for him?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, one, he has a relationship with Mike Malone, right? Yep. And I think that really helps because you need an advocate in your corner right now, and you need somebody who knows what you can do and the best version of yourself, somebody who believes in you. Mm-hmm. I think at this stage with what he's been through, and it just kind of reminds me, like, whether it's in basketball or in life, like, you've never really made it, mm-hmm. right? Like, you can think that you've made it, and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you or something happens. And, like, the hardest thing to do is to stay on top because, one, everyone's coming from you, but two, there's just things that happen. Yeah. And I feel, I look at this story, and you outlined it beautifully in that monologue, of just all the things that happened to this guy through no fault of his own. Mm-hmm. He got hurt and then he pushed through it. That's what you're supposed to do, right? That's what you would want. We certainly want people to do. And I saw him the other night on draft night. He was, it was a Laker draft. He was still, allowed to work out there, and he was the last guy in the gym. It was like draft night, forever, the last pick in the draft, shooting buckets late at night, 11 o'clock at night, just getting his work in. And I love the fact that at least he's with somebody who knows what he can be.
Yeah, this is a great fit. In fact, this is the best fit he could have because if you think about it, this Nuggets team is poised to now make a big step. Now we know they're still in the West and the climb is tough. That starting unit, those three kids, when you look at Gary Harris and Murray and Jokic, you want a guy to come off the bench with a second unit and go get you points. If he's healthy, Rachel, he's going to torture second unit point guards. And the other thing he does is he teaches those young guys about what this league is about, even though they're off to a good start. Most importantly, he gives those two guards a mental health break. They don't have to do it all themselves. They can play with him and off of him, and we know if he's healthy, he's still capable of going out and getting 25 or 30 on a given night. And if he is healthy, I think this is akin to the Toronto Raptors' second unit last year. That really, I think, was the best in the league. He anchors a good, solid second unit for Mike Malone's teams, and the starters, as young as they are, can kind of grow, while Isaiah takes a lot of heat off of those two young guards.
And also, it's good to remember the way the NBA, more than ever, bench players, starters, I mean, the mix is so much more, right? Finishers. We've certainly seen Mike D'Antoni do unconventional lineups with how he, employs James Harden and Chris Paul. I just think that where you're playing, I know Isaiah, and I talked to him all throughout last year, he wanted people to show what happened in Boston. It's not a fluke, right? He's like, I am an all-star. I am, a guy who should be a starting centerpiece. He was looking for that in his free agency, couldn't get it, but this might poison to do it for the next one.
Would either one of you guys go on a transatlantic flight with only one pilot?
Yeah.
Of course not. So you have two young pilots, right? You co-pilots in Murray and Gary Harris, and now you have the veteran pilot that they can take a break and go get their food in the back cabin while he flies the plane a little bit. I think it's perfect, and because of the relationship with Mike Malone, it sets up perfectly
the
for
Lakers
them.
liked him in that role too. Like I remember Luke Walton saying, what's really been good about having him on this team is that everything we've been telling those young players, he actually says to them directly. Like he's backing up what the coaches are telling them because he's a veteran. He knows how to play in this league. I mean, he's carved out a role for himself and a very good role for himself over the years. And when young players hear it from a peer, it's different than when they hear it from a coach.